Hello everyone, welcome to the next episode in our FreeBSD tutorial list. This episode is going to be creating virtual machines with Bhyve. As promised, if you follow tutorial 1 and 2, you should be able to boot up to a slim login manager. We're going to log in with the existing user we created in the previous tutorials, and it should bring us to a nice XFCE desktop. There's a lot to cover in this tutorial, so I'm going to be quick. We're going to bring up a terminal here, and the first thing you want to do is su to root, log in as your root user. If you created your user in the group wheel, as we discussed in the first video, you should be able to do this no problem. Now, the first thing we want to do is do a pkg install grub2-bhyve. And what this is going to do is it's going to install the grub2 startup scripts for Bhyve that let you boot Linux virtual machines. This is really important. We're going to install Ubuntu server here and get it running. Now, I have already done this, so I'll show you here in a second. We'll grub for that. And that's already installed, so that should be installed. Now, the next thing I want you to do is we're going to do some prep. So I find it easy. Just go to the root directory here, / and let's create a folder called virtual_machines. And then let's go inside there and let's create a directory for our ISO files. And then let's go ahead and create a directory for our Ubuntu server. So now if you ls, you should have 2 folders in there. Now, I want to go back to the home directory. And the next thing you want to do is you want to fetch your Ubuntu release that we want to use. So for this demo, we're going to use the latest version of Ubuntu server, which at this time is 15.04. And you can download that simply by running this command: fetch releases.ubuntu.com 1504 ubuntu-1504 server amd64.iso. I'm going to hit enter for you so you can see that that's going to start downloading. And there you go. We're going to skip this because I have already downloaded that file. So we don't have to worry about that. Now, once that file's downloaded, you want to copy that to your ISOs directory. I already have the file under the root directory, and I renamed it ubuntu15server.iso. So I'm going to move that to virtual machines ISOs. So what we want to do is we want to move ubuntu15server.iso. The reason why I renamed it is just so that we don't have all those dashes. It just makes it easier to script, because we have to put this in a couple different places throughout the project here. So then the next thing we need to do is we need to get ready. We need to prepare the kernel. So kld-stat will list the modules that are loaded. I'm running in a virtual machine here, so I have some VMware virtual machine drivers so that I can interact with my Windows PC that I'm on. But if you're on a physical machine, you should just have the pefs.ko, the kernel, the crypto.ko, and geom.eli, and UHID if you're using USB. But the VM stuff is all just because I'm in a virtual machine. Now, in order to virtualize this OS, you need to load the Bhyve module. So we want to do a kld load vmm. And you'll see that shows vmm.ko on the bottom. That is Bhyve. But we also want to load nmdm, which nmdm allows you to create virtual serial consoles. You're going to need that. Makes things nice. You'll see why later. And then we want to load the bridge module so we can create layer 2 bridges, and the tap module so we can create tap interfaces. So with all that loaded, we're ready to go. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we are going to want to create some sysctl values. And I am going to, one of them basically says to turn on the tap interface when the virtual machine starts. So on link up on open. So we're gonna create that. And the next one is IP forwarding, which you may or may not need depending on how you do the networking, but for the sake of completeness, I'm going to add that here. And then, of course, what you want to do is you want to add that value. You want to echo that out. You want to echo out the, we'll do this again. Let's go up to that sctl value. So you see we have the net link on tap. We want to echo this. We want to echo this out and send this to the sysctl.conf file under /etc, because we want that to be done automatically on startup. The other thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to edit your /boot/loader.conf file, which may not exist. Let me get rid of that slash. And right now you have the PEFs file there. And we want to add vmm_load equals yes, and nmdm_load equals yes, and if_tap _load equals yes, and if_bridge load equals yes. And that's going to make sure that when you restart your computer, that starts up automatically. And then the last thing is I like to create a file called remotes under etc. And essentially what we want to do is we want to echo the following to that file. VM1 B, and we want to do, and this is basically, we want to create a bunch of preset remote terminals here, so that if we want to create VMs, it's just easier to do that. So we're going to add that to the remote file, and then we're ready to go. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create the tap file, tap1 create, and bridge0 create. Then we want to add our tap1 to the bridge, and we also want to add our Ethernet interface to the bridge. Now, your Ethernet interface may be named differently, but mine is EM0. So you can see that I have two members, EM0 and tap1, as part of the bridge. That's going to be important. It's going to allow your VM to access your network card. The next thing that we want to do is we want to go into the virtual machine folder. So we have our server ISO here. We want to go into the virtual machine folder, into the Ubuntu server, and we want to create the hard drive. So right now we're going to use the command truncate, which is easier than just copying zeros to the file, because it just makes the file 10 gig in length, but it's not filled with data. So it's a little bit slower. It's not zeroed out, but it allows us to, you see we have the 10 gig virtual machine here now. So that allows us to basically create our hard drive for our virtual Ubuntu server. The next thing that we have to do is create a device map file. And the device map is used during booting, and it basically tells the machine where all the hard drives are. And we got to do the same thing for the virtual CD-ROM. There you go. And that's all we need for that file. And we should be good to go. So now the next thing that we want to do is we want to test start our virtual machine. Now, these commands are going to get kind of long here, and I'll show you how to create startup and stop scripts for each virtual machine so you don't have to type this every time. But while we're doing the installer, it's best if we type this. So we're going to do a grub Bhyve command. We're going to add the CD-ROM drive. We're going to say the map file is /virtual machines /Ubuntu server device.map. And we're going to set the memory to 1 gig of RAM, 1024. And we're going to call this VM1. Now, when you do this, it's going to come up with a GNU grub bootloader, and you're going to select install Ubuntu server. That's going to bring you back to the command line. What that did was that started the Linux kernel, but now you got to tell the Linux kernel to actually, you got to actually run it in a CPU. So that sets all the memory pointers for the Linux kernel and gets that ready. The next command is the Bhyve command itself. And this is going to get a little long. So I'm going to paste this in here, and there'll be a link in the video description to the actual commands. Well, that didn't work out too well, did it? Let's see if I can try this again. Let's open up the mouse pad here and see if I can paste this in a way that doesn't make a mess all over my terminal. Let's try this again. There we go. Okay, so what this actually says is you're going to have one CPU, 1024 megs of RAM. You're going to set up the actual COM device to be this tunnel interface. And you notice we create a file with the B interface. So A connects to B. So the virtual machine is going to connect to the A side of the serial console, and we're going to connect to B. And then you're saying, add a host bridge device. You're going to add a virtual net Ethernet device, and we're going to tie it to tap 1. You're going to add a CD device, and it's going to be loading that ISO file, and you're going to add a virtual IO. It's a virt.io, so it's a para-virtualized driver for the actual image file. So we're going to edit this, copy this, and we're going to paste this in here. And when I press enter, there you go. Now, the way we're going to connect to this is we're going to open up another window here, and we're going to we're going to go to root, and we're going to use this command called cu, which is basically connect to Unix /dev, and we're going to go to the B side of it, and here's the Ubuntu serial console installer. So we're going to select United States. It's going to come up here, and I apologize if it's a little slow, but I'm running a VM inside of a VM, so it's stacked a little bit. And it's going to start loading the components off the CD-ROM drive. Let's give this a second. Now, while this is doing this, let me open up one more console here. And you can see that the Bhyve process here is using 25% of our memory. So we're just going to follow the defaults here. We're going to call the system Ubuntu. Full name for a new user, might as well. We're going to call our user John. Password, I'm going to call the password video. Yes, I want to use the weak password. You should actually, no, I don't want to encrypt the home directory. If this was real, please use a strong password. And you're going to see it's going to go here. It's going to ask you, is your time zone correct? Yes, it is. I'm on the East Coast. And then what we're going to see here is we're going to use the entire disk. Now you can use LVM, but it takes a little bit longer, and I want to kind of rush through this piece. Yes, write the changes. All right, so it's going to start formatting the partition and installing the system. Now, it's going to ask you if you want to go out to the internet and pull the latest updates. For the sake of brevity, I'm going to choose no, but the network card is functional and it will go out to the internet and pull updates. So this will work great. Now, one thing to know, if you're doing this on a FreeBSD laptop with PCBSD or something, bear in mind that you cannot have multiple MAC addresses on a wireless card. So if you are using a wireless card, you're going to have to, you don't need the bridge interface. You can just create a tap interface, and you can put an IP address directly on the tap interface. And then you can set that IP address as your default gateway on your virtual machine. And with a firewall like IP firewall or PF, you can actually set up NATing, and you can actually NAT that interface out to the wireless network. And maybe in a follow-up video, I'll show you how to do that. But if you have a Northern Ethernet card, your guest virtual machine will just pull a bridged IP address from your router on your local LAN. There's no proxy information. It's going to go and update the mirrors. It's going to ask me if I want to update the system, and I'm going to choose no, I don't want to update the system. As there's kind of a lot to get through here, and I want to make sure that we have time to do it. Now, something to note, this is very much like KVM or Xen. So when the system shuts down, the hypervisor terminates. So you have to manually issue the command to restart the VM when you shut down a reboot. This is the same thing as Xen or any of these other hypervisors. So I'm going to do no automatic updates. I'm going to just turn on SSH, and that's pretty much it. And let it run through the install really quickly because I don't want to spend too much time on this. And then once this is done, I'll show you how to basically put this into a a script file, so that you can just start and stop what you want whenever you want. You don't have to worry about dealing with this. The only thing that you have to make sure that you manually create, if you want things to start and stop automatically, make sure that you update your rc.com file with the amount of tap interfaces that you'll need, one for each virtual machine. And we'll get to that at the end. I'll show you how to update your rc.com file. So this is the last little bit here, and it should be finishing up. It's going to ask to reboot the system. Now, this console that we're on here is a physical it's a virtual simulation of a physical serial console. So even after we shut off the virtual machine, the console stays live, and we basically don't have to. We can leave it up, and you'll see what I mean. I'll leave that console live. It's going to ask me, do I want to boot into the new system? I'm going to say yes. It's going to now restart the virtual machine, and you'll see here, once this restarts, Bhyve disappeared. So this system is now dead. So I'm going to move this console to the side here. Now, if we look into the Ubuntu server directory, let's clear this out. So now there's a couple things we want to do. We want to use the Bhyve the Bhyve control, and we want to kill that process, because otherwise the process just goes to zero. So now the process is dead. Now at this point, what I want to do is I want to go back to my notepad here, and there's a couple things that we can do. One is, if we don't need this ISO file here, we can basically just eliminate that from our script. which I can do. And what we want to do is we want to come up here and we want to do a crunch bang like that. And so we're going to turn this into a script here. And the first thing we want to do is remember that you can't just run this without running the kernel first. So we actually need to get a kernel to boot here. So I'm going to paste in something that I have from my notes here. So this is the same grub Bhyve command that we've run before. The difference is we're changing CD0 with HD0, and we're going to put a comma MS-DOS1. And what that is that's going to basically bring up the grub graphical boot menu, which you'll see in a second. And then we're pointing to the same device.map file. And that's basically it. And then what we're going to do is the very next command we're going to run is this Bhyve command. And instead of pointing, we've already corrected that to remove the CD-ROM out of that. Now, now that we have this, we're going to copy this, and we're going to go into Bhyve Ubuntu-server. Let's do this, Ubuntu_server .start. And we're going to paste this. Make sure that looks correct. And then we're going to vi.stop. And here we're going to do bhyve ctl --destroy --vm equals, and remember we called that VM1. That's what that VM1 on the end there is here, and then the ampersand returns us back to the foreground. So okay, so now we're going to start this with this script. Now before I start this, I want to bring up, now we're not typing all that stuff, let's bring this thing back here. Let's bring up this console, which we know is dead, but it's still connected to the dead it's still connected to the dead VM, right? So once we start this, you're going to see it's going to kick it off. Here's Ubuntu booting. It's going through its booting. Boom, 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 boom. It's booting up, and there we are. So we're booting Ubuntu server. Let's minimize our script that we ran here. Let's minimize that window. And you can see that Bhyve is running at 14%. Let's try to log in here. It would help if I typed the right password. Let's try that again. So now we're in here. You can see we've pulled an IP address off the local LAN here. And let's do an apt-get update. I forgot this Ubuntu. Don't forget to sudo. And you can see it's going out through the network, and it is getting updates. And it's a virtual machine running on FreeBSD. And this is a serial console. Let's pull the latest upgrade. Let's upgrade the system here. There's a couple package updates that are available for Ubuntu server here. Now, one of the things that we can do here is you're saying, well, that's great. It's a serial console. Now, I can SSH into that from another window. So you can manage it as a completely headless server. But you're probably asking yourself, well, this isn't very helpful. What if I want to run, Linux because I want to watch, Netflix, and they have a browser for Linux or something like that, where you want to do something that requires GUI access. Well, for that, we can apt-get install xrdp here. Don't forget sudo. And let's install that. There's a lot of prereqs for that. And then Let's give that a second to run through that. And notice you can see the CPU utilization on the Bhyve process. And then let's install XFCE4. And while that's doing that, let's not wait for that to finish. While that's doing that, let's go and look at the rc.com file, right? Because we want all this to work on boot. So let's go up to this vi/etc/rc.conf, and let's go down here. We'll make a section Bhyve stuff. And let's go in here and put what we need to put to get Bhyve to work here. So the first thing that we want to do is create a cloned interfaces section equals grid 0 and tap 1. Now you want to make sure you do that every time you add a new VM, you want to add a tap interface. Then you want to do ifconfig underscore bridge 0 and we want to add, we got to make sure every time we boot, we add the interfaces back to the bridge. So we want to add our local physical interface, and we want to add our tap 1 that we've created earlier, and we want to make sure we bring it up. So that's basically all we need. So now on boot, the interfaces will go back. So now you still have to manually start and stop your VM unless you actually write a startup script that calls those VM files. But the handbook is a great resource for creating RC startup scripts. So I'll leave that for another tutorial or for you to research on your own. But the other thing we want to do here is we want to do service xrdp start. And we want to make sure we sudo that as well. So it's active and running. So now let's see what the ifconfig. So our Ethernet interface has an IP on it. So what I want to do here is I want to bring over my remote desktop into this window, which I want to connect to that. So if I try to connect to this window here, so let's see 192.168.74.130, and I should be able to connect using the Microsoft Remote Desktop client. It full screen near the window, so you'll have to trust me here. Let's see. And I get a brand new XFCE desktop. Let me see if I can minimize this and bring it over. And we're logged into Ubuntu with a little XFCE desktop here. And so it's very usable. And there's the uname, Linux Ubuntu 3.19. So that is pretty much it on Bhyve on Ubuntu. Now the thing I want to do here is I want to issue a sudo shutdown and let that power down. Once that's powered down from the command line, you can do let me close this window, we don't need this. You can actually do a stop command, and it's going to kill that virtual machine. Now it's gone. Let's restart the system, and we will see how well the changes I made work. Let's give that a restart. So let's restart that virtual machine, and we'll see if I got the syntax right for the rc.com file. Let's make sure everything starts up and there's no issues. There you go. EM0, tap 1, bridge 1, bridge 0. I don't know if you saw that on the boot, but they all started. So let's bring up a terminal window here. Let's do an IF config and see what we see. Yep, our bridge is up, our tap interface is up. So now, let's do a KLD stat and see if everything is loaded. VMM and NMDM is loaded, as well as our interface tap and bridge tap. So now if we do /virtual machines, Ubuntu server, and then we do a /Ubuntu start, we should be good to go. And looks like it's starting up in that window. So let's open up a new console here and make sure everything's okay. We want to connect to Unix /L/dev/nmdm0b. There's the login screen. And just to prove it's running here, if I kill it, which is not going to be good for the Ubuntu, it's dead. You now can't do anything. So that's the end of the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a little bit longer than I wanted. The next one will be along soon. Thanks for watching.